Imagine that you can create a friend or even a life partner using only the power of your mind. This isn't science fiction, but a real practice designed to create a tulpa. Today, we will delve into the amazing world of these mental entities, learn where they came from, how they are created today, and what science says about them. And at the end, I'll analyze a letter from one of you. Nikita shared his unusual story with tulpas, and there's a lot to think about. A tulpa is a mental construct that a person creates through imagination and concentration. It's like an imaginary friend, but with a twist. Over time, it can develop its own consciousness and independence. The idea of tulpas comes to us from Tibetan Buddhism, where the word sprolpa means emanation or manifestation. There, tulpas were considered spiritual tools that masters created for teaching or helping others. But in Western culture, everything changed significantly when the traveler Alexandra David Neal described how a monk created a tulpa that, according to her, became too independent. How did this spiritual practice transform into what we see today? The concept of tulpas traveled a long way from Tibetan Buddhism, entering Western occultism through theosophy and authors like Annie Besant and Charles Leadbeater. In Buddhism, tulpas were linked to enlightenment, but in the West, they became seen as thought forms, a product of human consciousness. This is an excellent example of cultural exchange. Eastern ideas mixed with Western curiosity, resulting in a new movement. Now, let's jump to the present day. How do people use tulpas today? Today, creating tulpas is known as tulpamancy. It's a process of forming a tulpa through meditation, visualization, and constant attention. First, you choose its appearance and personality, and then through so-called forcing, the time spent interacting with it, you help it become autonomous and independent. Some people create tulpas for companionship, others to better understand themselves, and for some, it's a way to cope with intimate loneliness. The question arises, is this just a game of imagination or something more? A brief digression. There's much on this and other topics I can't discuss openly on YouTube due to censorship. Check out the coven after this video, the link is in the description. There you can find more materials, articles, videos, and practice. And on the topic of tulpas, there will be a short video, but about the more risque nuances of tulpamancy. Be sure to visit us. Returning to the topic, surprisingly, even modern science has become interested in tulpamancy. Studies show that more than half of tulpamancers have diagnoses like depression or anxiety, but many report that tulpas help them cope with the symptoms. Here's something else interesting. At Stanford, a study was conducted using MRI scans. When tulpamancers surrendered control to their creation, activity in the brain regions responsible for action planning decreased. This suggests that tulpas might not be just a fantasy, but a real phenomenon of consciousness. Amazing, right? Science views tulpas as a product of consciousness, while in esotericism and witchcraft, they are seen as something energetic entities created through magical practices. Many practitioners believe that through ritual or deep concentration, one can create not just an image in the mind, but a being capable of influencing the physical world. Some even claim that tulpas can use the human body. For example, temporarily taking it over or guiding a person's actions, like an invisible puppeteer. But how does it work? Esotericists say that a tulpa feeds on its creator's energy, and if the bond becomes too strong, it can manifest through physical sensations or even external events. For example, a headache or the odd behavior of those around you, as in Nikita's story, which we'll discuss later. Sometimes, these are interpreted as signs of its presence. It's important to remember that tulpas are not only amazing companions, but also entities that can carry risks. After discussing their connection to magic and the scientific view, it's worth talking about what can go wrong. One of the main dangers is loss of control. If a tulpa is created for a specific purpose, It can become so obsessed with that task that it starts acting independently of its creator's will. Imagine you create a tulpa to help you feel more confident. But over time, it starts demanding more and more attention, feeding on your emotions until you find yourself exhausted. In some cases, tulpas, especially those imbued with strong desires or sexual energy, can turn into something like succubi. Many practitioners, consciously or not, use them this way as companions that feed on their energy, which can lead to mental or even physical exhaustion. It also happens that a tulpa oversteps its role. Focusing too much on the original goal can become obsessive. For instance, a tulpa created for protection might start shielding you from everyone, including friends and family, leading to isolation. This isn't magic in the literal sense, but a reflection of how your mind can amplify what you've invested in the tulpa to dangerous levels. To avoid this, approach creating a tulpa consciously. Set clear boundaries, but if control does slip away, it's a sign that you should probably take a break and reconsider your intentions. I'm used to relying on my own strength and experience. Life shows there's a price for everything, and tulpas are no exception. They say they can be helpful, but I would never create a tulpa. Why? Because it would be like me, with my personality and my habits, and I'm too stubborn. And such a tulpa would surely try to control me. Creating a tulpa is like making a copy of yourself. It will take your strengths, but also your weaknesses. My tulpa would inherit my independence and will, and most likely, it would start arguing with me or pulling me in its direction. If I lose control of the tulpa, it could slip from my influence and do something I'd regret. I've seen people suffer greatly from playing with such things. Some people create a tulpa for their own needs, and then it starts draining their energy like a full-fledged energy parasite. So I won't be creating a tulpa. There are things best left untouched and powers that should be left alone. Let's summarize our journey into the world of tulpas. Tulpas have traveled an amazing path from spiritual tools in Tibet to psychological phenomena in the modern world. They show how ideas can cross cultural and historical boundaries, adapting to our needs. Regardless of whether you consider them a product of the mind or something more, tulpas make us reflect on the nature of consciousness and human connection. It's a really interesting topic. And as I said, I'll now analyze the letter Nikita sent me. Here's what Nikita wrote. He learned about tulpas 5 to 6 years ago and achieved good results within 2 months. He felt the presence of the entity he created, but began to doubt whether he was developing something like schizophrenia. Deciding to stop the practice, he told his tulpa one morning that he wanted to stop. After that, he developed a mild headache, like pressure on his forehead. On the subway, the pain intensified but remained tolerable. A girl sitting across from him suddenly started showing discomfort, then screamed and ran out of the train car, as if she also had a headache, but much stronger, more concentrated. Nikita isn't sure if this is related to his tulpa and wants to understand what it was. He's considering returning to practice, but fears the magical things. Let's figure this out. Nikita, your story is truly unusual. The headache you describe might be due to the strain of tulpamancy, as it demands significant mental effort. Many tulpamances report a similar sensation, especially in the early stages or during abrupt changes in their practice. As for the incident on the subway, that's more complicated. I can only hypothesize, as there isn't much data. It was a consequence of your decision to let the tulpa go. This triggered a strong emotional reaction in you, and you unconsciously projected it outward. A tulpa is part of a person and can manage their internal resources, including mental energy. The girl might have been sensitive to subtle manifestations. Thus, a sequence of events led to such obvious results. If you want to return to tulpamancy, do it consciously. Dedicate time to meditation and self-education. Think through the tulpa's structure carefully and remember that it carries a trace of your personality. Thanks for watching. If you have your own stories or questions, write them in the comments. Like, subscribe, and see you in the next videos.